Hey, everybody, welcome back to Your Inside Track to Success. I'm your host, Stewart Kraintz. And as always, we are here to bring you value, bring you the tools, the tips, and also the guests that are here to help you create the best version of your life, whatever your goals look like, whatever your vision for your life is. Bring as many different people from different walks of life and areas of expertise to support you in creating the best possible, most fulfilled version of your time here on this earth. So, just like every other week, this week's guest is somebody that I look up to in a lot of ways, somebody that I can call a friend. But what I love about him is he has overcome a lot in his life, and he is somebody that has really shifted the paradigm of what his life looks like. And he's also somebody that others look up to for teaching, training, healing. He is a Reiki master, trainer, practitioner. He is a coach. He is somebody that really others look to for healing in their lives beyond what the standard, medical system here in our country provides for us. And without further ado, I want to introduce you all to Anthony Penzarella. How are you, Anthony?
I'm doing amazing, Stu. Thank you for having me here. I'm grateful to be hanging out with you today.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I appreciate you taking the time. And I know the listeners are going to get a lot of value out of this conversation as well. And so I know I touched on it very slightly there in the intro, but, tell me a bit or tell us a bit more about how you got into healing, how you discovered it as a modality, and what Reiki is for people that may not know.
Yeah, sure. So the easy answer is how I got into it and how it discovered me.
Sure.
I actually won. I bid on a Reiki session in a congregational auction at a church I was attending at the time back in 2014. So we had a congregational auction. I was actually the only one that bid. And so by default, I won this Reiki session for like $35, right?
Perfect.
At the time, the practitioner was charging about 160, right, for a 90-minute session, which is market rate, around here at least. And I had this session. I finally went in. Like, I'll tell you, it was really interesting because it took about 4 months to actually schedule it. Right. It got moved, it got chopped, it got changed. This was like a free session, basically, that the teacher was giving out. And so I won this thing. She wasn't really in a hurry, right? Like to give it to give it out. So
Sure.
we finally, so like mid-year, we finally had the session, and it was nothing short of a spiritual experience. Right. And so, I laid on
Love
the
that.
table for about an hour or so, and there was laying on of hands and some soft music in the background, some nice aromatherapy. I was under a warm
Mhm.
blanket, and the Reiki master was actually a choir singer. So she had a beautiful voice, and she was singing little songs and just like toning different things. It was really beautiful. It was this beautiful kind of spiritual, energetic experience where I laid super relaxed, and I just felt really good, right? Like after it was done, I like opened my eyes and was like, my God, that was like a little more than an hour. Like, oh wow. Like, and I asked her, I was like, can we do more of that? Like, what was all that? Right.
Mhm.
So it was a really nice, relaxing experience, which in the West, Reiki is a technique for deep relaxation and stress reduction, which allows the body to naturally heal itself. Right. So it promotes natural
Nice.
healing by having the body get into a deep state of relaxation. Okay. That's how the West understands Reiki. Now, I
Sure.
had a great experience. I said, can we do more? She says, absolutely. I scheduled another session. By the next session, I was like, okay, listen, I got to learn this. Like, this is really cool. Can I learn this? Okay, look, I've got a kid being born in a few months. Like, I'd love to be able to support my now my former spouse, but I'd love to be able to support his mom through the birthing process. It sounds like this would be really great to relax her, and to relax the baby and to relax me. And so, like, I did my research too in between. I was reading and voraciously scouring the internet for what is the information that I could find. And I also found that, Reiki is not only a technique for stress reduction and relaxation, but it's also a system of spiritual and personal development and transformation. So, like, once I realized that it was both of these things, right? So in the East, Reiki is a reconnection to one's life force, right? Which we're all connected to this one life force, and we're all just extensions of that life force. Okay. And so we all have a soul and a spirit, and that's the way the East understands it. And when we are connected to our highest self is a healed state. Our highest self is no worries, no anger, gratitude, state of peace and compassion, and existing in the world from a higher perspective, right? So and Reiki, translated loosely, soul energy, right? So when you receive
Wow.
a Reiki session, I say you return to yourself, you return to who you truly are. And so there's different understandings of Reiki, and I was getting both because my practitioner master was incredibly deeply spiritual, and we were in the same church together, and it reminded me of the healing my grandmother used to do for us when we were kids. Okay, so it wasn't the first time I'd experienced Reiki. My grandmother never called it that, but what she used to do was lay hands on us when we had aches and pains, and she would call on angels and call on the Holy Spirit and God and Jesus and Mother Magdalene,
Sure.
Mother Mary, right? My grandmother was go to church every day at 6 a.m., deeply, deeply
Yeah.
religious and spiritual. My Reiki master was a spiritual woman attending a church, helping people through healing, right? So there's a couple of different ways I've experienced healing, and I've experienced Reiki, and it really kind of grounded it for me. I was like, okay, like, this is an Eastern practice being practiced in the Western world. Not everybody who comes to this is deeply spiritual. And for the practitioner, it's always a spiritual experience, but for the client, it could very much just be a time to relax and a time to let go
Yeah.
and allow the body to do what it does. What does the doctor tell you when you have, a little cold? Take 2 of these, get some rest, right? And call
However
me
many
in
of
the
us do
morning.
that.
Well, yeah, and not all of us rest, but first line treatment for all illness is rest and relaxation. Let go of all the things you're trying to do. Let the body do what it does and what the body wants to do every time. If it's not damaged enough, right? It wants to heal itself. We were born to regenerate and to heal itself, to heal ourselves. Our body does it innately. And Reiki is a practice of getting in touch with the body's innate intelligence and letting it work.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that amazing answer. And I think that you outlined it really well, especially for folks listening to this, maybe watching this on YouTube, who don't have a familiarity with Reiki. Maybe they do go to church and have experienced the laying of hands, as you said,
Sure.
which, as I think you eloquently described, are actually decently well connected. Um, but I think the question I have to follow up is, this sounds good in theory,
Yeah.
right? Like, but especially for folks that maybe haven't heard about Reiki before, or
Yeah.
really any type of healing modality outside of, the current doctoral system in the
Sure.
United States. Like, what type of proof, like what type of results have you seen, have your clients seen, and maybe just share some of those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, okay, so I've been practicing since early 2015. And then for the balance of I got into practice and practice as a professional practitioner early 2015. And then towards the end of 2015, I started teaching. So I've been teaching at the master level about 8 or so years. Okay.
Awesome.
And in that time, I mean, not only have I trained practitioners as well as masters, I've gotten to see quite a few people. For a while, it was not my full-time gig, right? And it's still
Mhm.
not. It's my spiritual healing practice, right? It goes along with my interest in transformation and helping people be well. So a lot of things that I do, and Reiki is a tool that I use with my clients to help them in the healing process. Okay, so I mean, I have seen, honestly, and I've written about this on my various social media. I've seen miraculous things happen personally. I
Mhm.
worked with people with cancer, and there was a woman who, after 4 to 5 sessions, she was actually cancer free. Right. And she did
Wow.
not go the traditional route of medical treatment. It was her choice. It was her second time with
Sure.
cancer. She
Sure.
decided that her mind and her body were more powerful. Now, this was her choice. I didn't convince her that she
Right.
didn't do medical treatment. She came to me going, I'm not doing this. Can you help me? And I said, well, I can try. And what Reiki does is creates an environment within the body in which cancer cells can't really exist, right? Because there's nothing to latch on to. Think about Reiki as transmitting love to the body,
I love that.
right? If you're a parent and your kid falls down and hurts their knee, especially as a toddler, I have a 7-year-old, right? So there was plenty of falling down. You immediately put your hands on their knee, right? To soothe the hurt. Or if you have a headache, you go, oh, my head, right? You're literally laying hands on yourself, right? So
Mhm.
the intention to heal is one of the most powerful tools we have available to us. The laying on of hands that can sometimes be the mechanism by which we're healing. Okay. I've seen people heal from cancer. There was a woman, for some reason, a lot of people come to me who have problems with their knees or with their legs. And,
Interesting.
and there was one incident where a Reiki master of many years, in fact, my girlfriend's Reiki master teacher who taught her Reiki, they came to a Reiki share. Practitioners get together occasionally and they share healing together to learn and, get around like-minded community. There was a woman who was actually getting both knees replaced the following day. And so we held this Reiki share kind of in her honor because of everything she'd done for the community. And we got all the healers together and we laid hands on her. It was a really beautiful experience. She walked in the studio with 2 canes. Okay. She couldn't really walk very well. And when she got done, what nobody seemed to notice, except for a few of us who were really, really paying attention closely. I mean, it was my dojo. I was responsible. I was running the show. I'm watching everybody, right?
Mhm.
But she was walking around without her canes. She stood up without her canes. And we were standing in a circle talking about the session, and she wasn't using her canes. And she actually left to go home for the night without her canes, having forgot her canes. A few minutes after she left, she comes knocking on the door with this face. I left my canes inside. Right. And she's like, I got to get them. But, for a while, she was in that, she was healed.
I
And
love
now, I
that.
mean, she did have to get the surgery. And I mean, she's doing amazing now, right? She's got 2 new knees. But for a while, the body was in such a state, and we call that the healed state, right? That if you don't have to go back into the world, guess what? You're healed for good. Right? But life has a way of dragging down our energy and pulling on our life force such that physical illness manifests, right? Because we don't have enough life force energy. Some people may have heard the term prana or chi. Um,
Mhm.
the key in Reiki is the exact same thing. The life force is prana, the life force is chi. Ki is the Japanese way to say that, right? So people are familiar with this concept. And I mean, I've seen miraculous healings, like I said about the cancer. And then there was also a 12-year-old boy who came, and they were going to amputate his left leg. He was a
Oh, wow.
pitcher, and you'll relate to this. He was a baseball kid, and he was
Yeah.
really good. And he was a pitcher, and he was having problems with his knees. He wasn't getting oxygen to his knees. And so,
Wow.
they put him on rest. He wasn't allowed to walk around. He wasn't allowed to play baseball. He just had to rest. His mom had the foresight to take, because the orthopedic surgeon had made their decision. They were going to take the leg, because it wasn't going to work. Well,
Wow.
what we did was we brought him in for a series of 8 sessions, 8 weeks in a row, about 45 minutes to an hour at a time. And we put him on the table. I worked with him and I focused energy directly on his knees. We did a full session, but the majority of the focus was to focus as much healing energy as we could in the period of time that we had on the knees. And religiously, he kept coming back, kept coming back, kept coming back. I taught his mother also how to apply Reiki. So she was working on him in the meantime. And so when they came back and they did the x-rays, he was fully available to go back to baseball, no amputation needed.
It's amazing.
It reinvigorated his body so that it got the oxygen to his knees, right? It relaxed enough that the body knew what to do to solve its own problem.
Here's a question for you, Anthony, and thank you for sharing those amazing stories. So I am familiar with everything you're speaking into because I've actually experienced in my own life. For any of the listeners who may not know, I'm 33 years old. Before the age of 29, I'd had 5 back surgeries in the L4, L5 region of my lumbar spine. And I had read a few books. I always forget the authors' names, and no disrespect to their work, but The Body Keeps the Score is an excellent book. And also When the Body Says No, which I believe is by Dr. Gabor Mate. And they're both speaking into the chronic illnesses and the hurts that the body develops over time with unprocessed trauma. In your experience as a master and someone who trains other masters, do you experience these issues as all coming from unprocessed trauma, unprocessed emotions, or is it something different?
It's there's no one good way to answer that without having a multidimensional response. So
Fair.
I see every problem as starting as an energetic problem, right?
Okay.
We as human beings, we give off and we receive energy. We're in a constant exchange of energy with the world, right? The more positive energy we give off, the more positive energy we're going to attract, the more positive energy we're going to receive. The more negative focus that we have, and we have both, right, at all times. The more negative focus, we wouldn't be balanced, we'd be falling over if we didn't, right? If we're pure positive energy, probably dissolve into light or something, right? That's the point eventually. But
Sure.
the energy we put off is the energy we get back. And a lot of times when we're talking about trauma, right, if you've experienced a trauma, and we all have in some form or another, throughout our lifetime, you're 33, I'm 44. I've experienced some trauma in my life, okay? The more trauma that you have, the harder time your body has processing it out of the body, right? Because your body holds on to energy. If your trauma was to your physical body, it's really holding on to it. If your trauma was to your mental and emotional bodies, you know, there's ways to release that, but it still sticks, right? Think about the thoughts that you think. That's coming from your mental body, right? Think about the emotions that you experience. We have an emotional body, energetic, that we can't see, but we know is there. And negative energy gets lodged and stagnates in our energetic fields around our body. And so the more trauma we experience, the more damaged it tends to express in the body, right? Not to say you're damaged because you have trauma, right? But trauma damages us, and our body keeps the score. And it's usually when the body's screaming at you that you know you have to do something. And it's unfortunately why most people find energy healing and spiritual healing at the end of their rope, right? When they just don't even know where to go, and they've tried so much, but they're not getting the answers, is because they don't have the whole story, right? There's more to it. There's a multidimensionality to our life. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, all of us, believe it or don't. And trauma absolutely runs up the scoreboard for sure. And Reiki as a modality helps to relax all of our bodies, including mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, esoteric bodies. And when it gets to relax, and when the transfer of pure positive energy, which is also another way to look at Reiki, it transmutes the negative energy And when there's more positive energy, it consumes the negative energy. So negative energy is
Right.
got nothing, it never goes away. Energy is never created, never destroyed. It just changes form, right? And so when you flood the body with pure positive energy, it consumes the negative energies and it releases those stuck emotional thoughts. A lot of people come to Reiki because they want another way to release emotionally. Me personally, I hadn't cried for 2 years before I found Reiki, and there was a lot of emotional trauma that was in my own life, and I cried on the table, and it felt amazing, right? And then the Reiki master said to me, well, that's how you release the energy. You cry, right? You have to move it. It's got to move somehow. And that's how you know you've released something, is you cry or you laugh. Sometimes it
Yeah.
manifests as laughter.
You know,
Yeah.
you just, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but you just said something really profound that I want to circle back to, because I feel like this is relevant to anybody listening to this. And if it isn't relevant to them personally, definitely someone that they know. Just law of averages, but also just the way that our society tends to operate. You said that a lot of people find energy work, healing work, spiritual healing when they're at the end of their rope. I know that to be true because of my personal experience laying in the hospital bed after my 4th or 5th back surgery, knowing that, just having this deep knowing in my pit of my stomach that I didn't know why I was ending up in the hospital so many times, and I wasn't even 30 yet, but I knew that I had to do whatever it took to get to not be there any longer. So I would definitely say that I was at the end of my rope in that regard. And also thinking back on that time of my life, I couldn't cry.
Hmm.
Like I was completely stopped up. You know, you could tell me the most horrible thing or something horrible could happen to me, and I would just kind of just grit my teeth and bear it and keep going. And so how do you, how would you recommend or explain how people can check in with themselves before they hit that point of no return, where they might be at the end of their rope, or there might be serious physical harm being done to their bodies because they're not checking in with themselves in the ways you're describing?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of as easy as what you just said, right? Like, I encourage people to listen to their body and even ask their body questions, right? Even before they get any kind of Reiki treatment. Some of my coaching clients, like, they don't want Reiki. Okay, great. Like, how are we going to address the energy? And so I always tell people, listen to your body, talk to your body, and get quiet and wait for the response. The fact that you're feeling anxious or fearful or depressed, right? These are all energetic signals that something needs to change.
Really?
Like, the natural state of being is not depression. The natural state of being is not anger or worry
Sure.
or frustration, right? These are lower form emotions that have lower energy. And so when we can get acquainted with what we're actually facing in life, with what we're actually feeling, we can just get by ourselves for 5 minutes a day and like do a review of like what happened today and how did that make me feel. That's like the first step in healing yourself, right? Becoming aware of how you feel based on your experience, right? Because our experience create our feelings, which create our thoughts about those feelings, which create emotions, which create behavior, which could be then causing our mood, right? And if we have our
Mm.
mood for long enough, what do we call it then? A temperament. And so everything we experience translates in the body and it becomes us, right? Like, everything that we're consuming on a daily basis, it's not just our food. It's what we listen to. It's who we're around. It's the energy in the environments that we choose to stay in. It's what we read. It's what we look at, right? That's our diet. So I say, watch your diet, watch your intake, if you want to get clear, you got to cut out the noise. And one of the ways that I did this, even before I found Reiki, because I was on a journey of self-discovery and transformation, a coach that I had at the time said, I want you to do a media fast. And I want you to do it for 7 days. Like, all right, that's doable, right? No news, no media that you don't choose consciously, no live television, no newspapers. Now, at the time I was working in a position where I had to look at media for my job.
Sure.
In a specific industry. It's like, unless it's specifically related to your job, like it doesn't go in your brain. Okay, great. So I did it for 7 days. And then I did it for another 7 days and another and another and another. I still don't consume media the way I used to. It's been now since 2014. I don't watch the news and I don't watch sort of mainstream television. I just choose what goes into my brain. I choose what goes into my awareness. Like I still watch television, but I will watch a specific thing at a specific time that I choose. Right? That's why Netflix is great and YouTube. We can watch everything we want on demand. And that's amazing for emotional health. Like, I mean, even to go so far as to say, like, when you're watching something live, like a sporting event on TV, you're also absorbing all the energy of all the people watching that sporting event. And I don't want that, right? I don't want that at all for me. So my encouragement to people, if they do nothing, do a daily review. How am I feeling based on how I'm living my life today? And forget about tomorrow or yesterday or what happened last week. Like in this moment right now, which is basically our life, every day is happening. It's always just now. And there really is no future, because every time you look, it's just now, and it's now, and it's now, right? And
It's never
before,
later.
just kind of always exists in our brain, like in our memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we can get some kind of a review and then a conscious, I also tell people, repeat this right before you go to bed. I take back any energy that I left out into the world today. I call it all back to me. Any energy that I left out there in generosity, that I spent time with people helping or serving or solving problems, right? I left a piece of myself out in the world. Now I'm going to reclaim that for me. I'm bringing it back into myself right now, this moment. And it works wonders for regeneration and for being stress-free before you go to bed, right? Calling back your energy, even a very simple thing, because that's part of your body's innate intelligence. It knows how to do that. We never were taught this in school, because this isn't taught in school.
No, it's not.
The doctor's not going to teach you because they don't teach it in medical school. But we have the power to talk to our bodies. And our body will respond scientifically, right? Because of our commands, because of our intention, because of our instructions that we're giving it. Every negative thought that we have is instructions to our body to hold on to it. Right? The more we ruminate and focus on what's negative in life or our experience, the body's like, oh, you want more of that? Okay, all right. Well, we'll just hold on to that, and we'll be at that frequency, and then that's what you'll attract. Right? So, like, the more negative things happening, the more negative things happen.
So I want to interrupt you here because I feel like this is critical. How is what you're describing related to the law of attraction? Because the people that are listening to this show have goals, they have dreams, they have vision for what they want to create with their lives. How does this relate to the law of attraction?
So the law of attraction says like attracts like, right? You get back what you put out.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're trying to manifest, which is what we do in life, that's why we're here, to manifest. Not just to get stuff that's great or luxurious, right? But to have an experience that we think about in our mind and project onto the reality screen of the world, right? It starts in here. It starts between the 6 inches between our ears. What's our mind saying about what we want to experience? Okay, so the law of attraction is a very powerful law, but it's a secondary law. It's a secondary law to the law of radiance and the law of first cause, right? I decide,
what are those?
right? So the law of first cause says, I am cause in my life. And so what I think about comes about. And so I then, from that first cause intention, I radiate out that thought. We put it out there in the universe through the law of radiance. Okay. From my heart, my mind, from that spot of, yeah, that's what I want. I put those thoughts and feelings. Feelings is what really brings it back to us. Okay. And that's all part of the law of attraction. But the law of attraction, think of it like gravity, right? When you put out, you radiate out what you want, it creates an energetic field and it creates a gravity to you. And that which you're calling in gets drawn unto you. That's the attraction part. It's like step 3 in the way it works, as it were, right? So it starts in first cause, thinking about what you want. And that's how they teach people about the law of attraction. Think about what you want, and then be about what you want. And what you be about is what you radiate out, right? Because who you are comes back to you more quickly than what you want.
So what's an example of being about what you want for people that might be fuzzy on that?
Okay, so in theory, you want to get a new job.
Okay.
Right? But mostly the job that you want is outside of something maybe that you've never done, that you've ever done before.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So to start out, you have to believe that it's possible, right? To have this new job in the realm that you never wanted, that you don't have experience in, right? You have to believe it's possible. And if you believe it's possible, you will act like, you can train yourself to act like the person who believes it's possible, right? And so because you believe it's possible, you can feel the possibility. You know this from work and transformation. We actually manifest through our heart. We're radiating
facts.
out our fields, not from our brains. Our hearts are the magnets, create the magnetic field, right? We are electromagnetic creatures in this world. And so when you are being the person, right? The law is be, do, have. When you're being the person that does the thing. So I want this new job in this new environment, right? So now I got to do the things that person does, right? That person makes a case for themselves as to why they're capable, but gets the letter in the hands of the right people, right? Attracts the networks and the collaborators or the champions that they would need to make a case for this person would be a great fit because of what they've done in the past. They're the kind of person we're looking for, right? It's all very practical stuff, right? Because we're in this world, all we have is the practical stuff to do the mechanics of what we're trying to attract, right? And so when you believe in yourself, to put it simply, and then you do the things that somebody does who believes in themselves, you create a result.
Love it.
Right? And that result's going to be in direct alignment with your belief. And the faster you train yourself to be in alignment with your belief, the more strongly you radiate out what your intentions are, and it comes back to you. I did this over the past month with a new position that I created for myself.
Yeah.
I got clear. I took the steps and I just followed the energy. I followed what I felt in my heart to be, that felt good, right? They say manifesting law of attraction, you follow what feels good. That's the path of least resistance, right? And so a practical way to get what you want is to think about it, be about it, feel about it, and then be relaxed enough to know it's coming, right? Because you're creating it. And what we create in our minds, if we feel about it with enough emotion, we have to be able to hold it in our hands. That's Bob Proctor, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So that would be my explanation of how that works in like a practical way. I try to be as practical as possible and try not to be woo-woo, right? Like from the woo-woo to the how-to is like what I'm about.
Well, no, I mean, I actually think there's a space for both, right? And just trying to make sure everybody understands what you're talking about, especially since This conversation, I think, is absolutely full of gold, lots of really amazing nuggets. And thank you for dispensing with all of them.
Yeah.
And you're just using a little bit of terminology maybe not everyone has heard. And that's perfectly all right, because part of growth is learning new things.
Yeah.
And based on everything you just shared, something that I thought about, some people might be listening to this thinking, okay, you described basically how to manifest what I want. You also spoke about the importance of energy and what we're consuming and how that has a direct effect on our mindsets, our bodies, our energy, our output, our productivity. What is your advice to somebody who maybe they're in a job
Yeah.
or they're in a relationship, or maybe they're just in close proximity to, like, let's say their parents or their siblings, and they feel the energetic weight that these relationships or their circumstances bring, and they know that they are called for something bigger and better and greater.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to someone who finds themselves in a situation like that?
Yeah, because some situations take longer to get out of, so to speak, right? Yeah, I want to live somewhere else, but I currently live with my parents. I want to be in a relationship and I'm currently not in one, right? I want to be in the kind of relationship that I want, but I'm in a relationship that doesn't work like that, right? A lot of people are in spaces where they want better for their career, they want better for their relationships, they want better for their finances, their health, right? So I think when to be really, really practical about it, I would say focus on what you want, right? Because what we focus on, we bring about. And
Sure.
so even if you're in the situation that you don't want, you can be wise enough to know that you don't want it. And that's the first step in sort of raising your consciousness around the issue itself. Okay. So it's like, I know what I don't want. Now let me get really clear on what I do want and just focus my attention as much as I can without being pulled into a distraction of the environment that I don't want, which is just more information about what I don't want. So it makes me clear more about what I do want, right? And so if you're in a situation you're not in, you don't want to be in, you focus on the one that you want to be in, right? And so by focusing energy on the situation you want to be in, you start drawing it unto you, and you start drawing the opportunities, people, information that you need to process to make different decisions to move you towards what you want, right? And I would say do it in faith, right? That it's already coming true because you have that desire in your heart, right? And so it's not fake, it's real. Right? Your desires are valid, your desires are real, and you deserve to have them. And so if you focus on those desires, you're being at cause in your life. This is what I want to create, right? And so by doing the steps, which we just talked about, and by focusing on what you want, you have a better chance of attracting it quicker than if you were going back and forth going, oh God, I hate this. This is terrible. I just want the other thing, right? And
Right.
I've been there. Wholeheartedly. I've been
Oh,
there.
we all have.
And I still go there, right? Like I'm no perfection. I'm not perfect. I don't get everything I want as soon as I want it, but I don't stop going after it because I know what I want, right? And everybody has that opportunity. One of the ways which helped me manifest differently was learning Reiki, right? Because it allowed me to clear out some of those negative emotions, allowed me to get perspective on the negative experiences in my life, and it allowed me to get really clear on who I was being in situations, right? So Reiki, I don't know if you know this or not, but Reiki is not just a system of energy healing. It's also a way to think, right?
Interesting.
And so
Tell me more.
the principles of a Reiki practitioner, not commandments, not laws, right? Not statutes, but principles, right? And these are principles that if every human being followed these principles and never touched Reiki in their life, they would be able to heal from mental, emotional, and physical trauma. Okay. And the principles are for today only, and this is something that I recite, for today only, I release anger, I release worry. Instead, I'm grateful for the many blessings in my life. I am devoted to my work, whatever that may be, and I am kind to people, including me. And so when you aren't living in the future, right? When you're in this present moment, the now, when you're addressing now as now, you're not living in the past, you're not angry about what, I'm not saying don't feel anger, right? There's no don't be angry, right? It's release it. Get in touch with it. Why are you angry? What's making you angry? Can you do something about it? All right, so do something about it, right? So you're not angry. Why are you worried? Can you do something about it? Right? You're borrowing trouble from the future. It hasn't even happened yet. You're a powerful creator. It's probably going to happen. You focus on it too much, right? But really, it's about being grateful for the circumstances and the experience and the conditions and the contrast, because gratitude is the third principle, negates anger. You can't be grateful for your things in your life and be pissed off all the time. You can't be grateful and worried about the future. It doesn't fit. Right. So when you create your life from you hear this all through for the past probably 20 years, the gratitude movement and the law of attraction and being grateful is like triggers the law of attraction, because you're grateful for what you have. You're not coming from lack or anger or frustration. Your vibration or your frequency raises, right? And so the higher the frequency, the higher the reality that you attract. So gratitude is the antidote to anger and worry. And if you're devoted to your work, right, and we're all here doing something, we're all here. So don't even be angry or worried about the work, like you chose it, okay? If you're not devoted to it, choose something different and like be devoted to that, okay? So be devoted to your work. And once you're not angry, you're not worried, you're grateful, and you're devoted to your work, serving humanity in some form or another, what else is there to do? You're happy. Like you're happy. And so they call this the secret art of inviting happiness into your life. Just for today, don't be angry, don't be worried, be
Love
grateful,
that.
be devoted to your work, and be kind. Because if you are happy and then you're kind to somebody who maybe is not so happy, it gives them space, right? You're spreading kindness at that point. You're holding space to just love on somebody because you're happy, like, and you have no reason not to. So compassion is a big part of it, and spreading positive energy through just letting people be as they are and being kind to them anyway, right? Because we don't know what people are going through. And part of that kindness is using loving, healing Reiki energy to give them a treatment, right? It includes giving people Reiki treatments, right? Whether that's for free or for exchange or for profit, it doesn't matter, right? So that's the philosophy that I live by since I discovered it. And I teach that to anybody, regardless of whether they're ever going to lay hands on somebody.
I love it, man.
It clears the energy field, right? When those principles were given, we got to look at why they were given. We had a sensei in Japan in the early 1920s who was responding to natural disasters, earthquakes in Japan. And he was running around laying hands on people, healing them of their emotional suffering, their physical ailments, right? Their mental suffering over the damage and the devastation.
Healing the trauma.
He was healing the trauma. And he used to do this 6 people at a time through his hands, and his feet, and his breath, and his eyes. We can do all of this with our entire body. It's not just hands. It's a level 2 teaching, okay? But the point is, he would revisit these places after he came back from a trip. And it turns out after like a month or so, they went back to their mental suffering. They went back to their emotional trauma. They went back to the physical, like if they had a physical ailment, like it was giving them struggle. And so what he devised based on his own connection with his higher self and with his, his version of the divine in Japan in the 1920s, was these principles, which were not new, which were actually drawn from a bunch of world religions, right? That said, look,
Yeah.
be grateful, be here now, be kind, don't be angry, don't be worried, like be devoted to your work. And it gives you purpose and it clears negative energy. And that's the most important point, right? When you clear your mind of the junk, right, you have an opportunity to put more clear things in it. And if you're more clear and more happy and more positive, you're going to put more of that out there and you're going to get more of that back. And it's a cumulative effect, right? I was not a nice person before I found Reiki. I wasn't. Like, I was damaged and traumatized and emotionally hurt and in a lot of physical pain from various injuries. I was an athlete growing up, and I had a lot of injuries. One of them was a career-ending injury. And so I had a lot of trauma. I had a lot of physical trauma. I had a lot of emotional trauma. I had a lot of blame and shame going on for other people being responsible for my life. And being on the journey of self-discovery at the time, and then finding Reiki and kind of putting it all together. And then I started practicing non-anger and non-worry and gratitude and devotion and present moment awareness and being kind to people. My whole life changed. It changed everything. I healed and I got happy, just like they said.
Yeah, and that, I mean, happiness, I feel like, is what most people are pursuing anyway.
Yeah.
Underneath most goals, it's really just, I want to feel happy.
Yeah.
Why do you want to be a millionaire? It's not actually because you want $1,000,001 bills sitting in your house. It's you want the freedom or the happiness or the ease of life that you associate that with.
Yeah.
You were sharing something, and man, I got to tell you, this has been an incredible conversation. We're absolutely going to have you back on the show again, maybe for a part 2, but something that I've observed. So I'm asking you this because I'm just curious.
Sure.
You talked about the sensei in Japan healing people, and then after a period of time, they went back to their old ways of being.
Yep.
I have also witnessed in my own journey and observing the journeys of others a tendency for people to do the healing, like go to seminars, you know, receive Reiki, other forms of healing modalities,
Yeah.
and almost choose to stay in a place of constantly healing, or or almost choosing like a place of victimhood against the trauma that they're theoretically trying to heal.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how does that relate to the committed to the doing the work that you were describing? And how do you recommend people get out of that place of just staying stuck in the healing, in the air quotes that I'm putting? Because I don't know that you are healing, and maybe you could tell me if I'm wrong, but if you're just staying in that spot over and over,
Yeah.
how can you flip that switch so that you actually begin to take the healing, the actual healing, and move it into something in your life that achieves the result you want?
Yeah. And so I'll answer this from a controversial perspective, and we may have to go to part 2 on this one, right?
All righty.
You might find some people saying from an unhealed place, just focus on what you want, man. Just focus on what you want. You don't have to be a victim. Just focus on what you want, right? As if to imply there's not work and reflection and journaling and thinking and feeling and releasing of emotion, like all along with it, right? In this world, we call that spiritual bypass, right? Everything's going to be great. I took the training, so I'm going to be healed, and I feel in this healed state, so it worked, and it's all good. And then I go home and I cry myself to sleep every single night because nothing worked. right? Because
Right.
I'm stuck in that, well, if I just get this next thing and I just have this one training, and if I hire that coach or go to that healer, they're going to give me the healing. Like it's going to happen to me. I think it's a difference between thinking healing is going to happen to you versus taking 100% responsibility and then using the tools that are available in the world, whether it's Reiki, some other form of energetic natural healing. I mean, there's only about 1,000 to choose from, right? Depending on who you talk to and which part of the world.
Mhm.
And actually, instead of like taking the spiritual bypass route, how about actually taking the bypass to go around the struggle, to go around the, it's going to happen to me if I just do enough, and if I just pay enough, and if I go to this retreat and I go to that healer, right? That's actually the bypass part, because you're bypassing responsibility. Okay. And so why not just take the highway, bypass the struggle, and take the bypass and get on the highway, right? And get on the highway to healing, which is 100% responsibility in your hands. Here's a bunch of tools that you can use every single day, and they most 100% work every single time if you work with them, right?
Yeah.
Reiki's a tool in healing. It's one that I go to often. The fact that I'm a certified master instructor and I teach classes and certification, that's the passion. That's the,
Sure.
here's this tool and let me show you how to use it like a master.
It's
And by
also
the
you
way,
having done the work.
correct. Not only studying under various masters, but also practicing as master and teaching other masters how to not be masters of Reiki, but how to master themselves. Reiki is really a practice of self-mastery that has a side effect of energetic healing based on the purity of the state of the practitioner, right? Because the practitioner can have their junk, right? And be what we call the unhealed healer, right? And they're not practicing what they preach, but they're doing a thing and people are getting benefit, but even the practitioner sometimes doesn't get benefit. So I would say the key to everything is taking the action, right?
Yeah.
It's knowing, not just knowing what could be done or expecting some kind of miracle from the spiritual energy or the healing modality. When you put the responsibility on the healing modality to heal you, you're taking it away from yourself, right? And there's no healing that takes place. The healing takes place when you decide and you be about it and you embody it and you believe and you do the things and you take the steps without, expecting a certain time frame, right? Well, if I just do this, then I'll be healed. If I just do that, then I'll be healed. Really, it's about getting yourself in a healed state and training your body to stay in that healed state by the way that it responds to the experiences around you based on what we put in our mind and what we practice every single day. Practice our
Yeah.
thinking, practice our being, practice our disciplines, whatever they are, whether it's for you, it's running. For me, it's doing yoga and going to the gym, healthy eating and juicing still, right? Like the different practices to raise our frequency, to lower negative energy, to be stress-free so that when you're stress-free, like this stuff just bounces off of you. When you're
Yeah.
in a lower state, it sticks to you, right? So it's a matter of changing your mind and changing your behavior and being authentic to like what actually works versus not non-responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Does that
and,
make sense?
and 100%. And guys, maybe just to draw a parallel that isn't so much about healing, but I think will resonate with those of you listening. What Anthony's describing is the difference between reading 100 personal development books one time versus reading one personal development book that you really resonate with 100 times and actually taking it and using it like a textbook, actually doing all the exercises in it,
Yeah.
not just intellectualizing, oh, that would be really cool if I did that one time, never, and actually doing it. And I can actually say from my own experience, I had ended a relationship over a decade long, and I had a lot of feelings and a lot of things to heal, obviously. I found a book. I loved it. I resonated with it, and I chose to treat it like a textbook. And I did every single exercise that the author had written in the book. And I still had lots of stuff to heal at the end of it, but man, did that springboard me forward than if I had just been combing different relationships books for months and months and months. And so, yeah, I mean, responsibility, y'all, is 1,000% a pillar you do need to lean heavily into in propping up your house, propping up your foundation of your life if you want to create anything of meaning. And so,
Oh, getting chills.
man, yeah, well, I mean, you've been giving me chills this entire conversation, brother. I had to repay you somehow, but we've been chatting for some time now, and really feel like we could keep going for several hours, but we'll just have to have you on again soon. And so, with that said, I want to make sure that people are able to connect with you, that they're able to, learn more about Reiki,
Yeah,
what it might mean to become a Reiki practitioner.
yeah.
And also, you are a coach. I know your coaching services are available as well.
Yep.
What are the best places for people to reach out to you?
Yeah. So if you're thinking about the internet, risereikidojo.com. That's rise, RISE, Reiki, REIKI, dojo, DOJO.com. And then on Instagram, you can see Anthony Penzarella now is my handle, and Rise Reiki Dojo on Facebook.
I love it. And where do you hang out primarily for folks to get in contact with you, have a conversation?
Where do I hang out?
Yeah. Instagram,
Both.
Twitter.
Both. Instagram, I hang out on Instagram. I have a presence on Facebook, and I have some private groups, a healing community that I've built on Facebook as well. It's called the One Love Healing Arts Collective. That's another way if you want to request access to the group. If you want to learn about healing or just be in a healing community, I've created that. That's totally free. But I do respond over Instagram. You can also send me a message and even schedule an appointment on my website. A lot of people, first time they're interacting with me is usually like my website, and there's a little request form in there, and you can even submit questions. I usually do about like a 30-minute free consultation to get any questions answered. If people have questions about me or the practice or whether it's right for them, I will set up time and talk them through individually, whether they're looking for a session or training, we can decide together, whether it makes sense to support them.
Yeah. Awesome. And folks, I've received Reiki from Anthony in the past, absolutely not only a master, but somebody that you can feel very safe with if this is your very first time exploring what energy healing can do for you. And so cannot recommend him enough. Also why he's on the show.
Thank you,
Um,
brother. Appreciate you.
but before we let everybody go, Anthony, final question is, what can you acknowledge yourself for today?
Today, for staying in my purpose, for living out my passions, and for being resilient no matter what life has presented me with as an opportunity to be resilient about. I keep going. I know what I want, and I keep going.
I love it, man. I love it. Thank you so much for being on. Everybody, if you received any value from today's episode, please like, subscribe, share with a friend. I know that there is somebody that could benefit from hearing this information today as well. And it also helps grow the show so that more people can find this information as well and continue to level up their lives. And without further ado, this has been your host, Stewart Kraintz. Thank you guys for joining us today.